Chapter 14 of Betty Baird by Anna Hamlin Weikel. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Holly Jensen. Chapter 14 Miss Jane's Seed Picter. Lois and Betty had grown more and more intimate as the months passed, and to their delight, Mr. Bird had acceded to Mrs. Baird's urgent invitation to have Lois spend part of her vacation at Weston. So their parting was not such a sad matter as it might otherwise have proved, and Betty reached home on a bright June evening, warm and dirty, but joyous in the anticipation of a long, happy summer. "It's so good to be at home, Mother," she kept repeating. Her father was pleased with her glowing accounts of the school. "It is indeed gratifying, Elizabeth, to hear from our cousin that you received the highest marks in your class," he remarked. "She seems to think you are a prodigy in Latin. I trust, though, that this commendation will not conduce to any unworthy pride." "No, indeed," laughed Betty, "for she said it was not at all surprising when you were my teacher." Dr. Baird looked gratified and smiled complacently. "How did you manage to come up so in algebra?" asked her mother. "Oh, as I wrote you, that horrid Miss Leet left. We simply made her go. The dearest little teacher came in her place. She is the kind that makes stupid girls learn in spite of themselves, and I suppose that accounts for my progress. But really, I was ashamed to go into her classes unprepared, I liked her so much." "It seems like a miracle," said her mother, not without a motherly disdain of any hint of stupidity in her offspring. On Betty's first evening home, Elder Huggentugler came in. He was the oldest officer in the church, a thin, stooped little man with shrewd black eyes and a megaphone voice. He was very loyal to his pastor. A stick in the mud, he called himself, proud of his old-fashionedness. He seemed to have a lurking idea that his conservatism kept this old world from flying off at a tangent. Warming to reminiscences, he said to Betty, "I was an elder in this church before your daddy here was born. Yes, I was." And he shook his head argumentatively. "You have seen a great many changes, Elder," said Mrs. Baird. "Changes, Mom? Aye, that I have. They were a dumb lot here when I came over from Yeller Crick. I teached 'em everything. I was elder, sexton, Sabbath school superintendent, and I read from the Holy Book when floods kept the preacher away." "Didn't they have a regular pastor in those days, Elder?" asked Betty. "Bless you, no, child. We had to be satisfied with preachin' once a month, as the preacher had 7 or 8 churches to minister to. He had to ride from one to the other on horseback, and when the water was high, he often couldn't ford the streams. Then we had to go without any preachin'. Many's the night I've stayed up to daybreak, keepin' floatin' trees and logs from breakin' down my cabin, leanin' out of an upstairs window and pushin' them away with a long pole." "How exciting!" exclaimed Betty. "Excitin'? My child, there is nothin' as stealthy and tetchy as a crick, except," and his fist came down with an emphatic blow on the table, "except church music committees." Dr. and Mrs. Baird exchanged amused glances, for they knew what to expect. "Would you believe it, Betty?" he continued. "'Twas long before you was born, they brought an organ into the church right under my nose." And again his knotted hand thumped the table. He looked around for sympathy, fully believing they all thought as he did, for he blamed only the music committee for introducing that devil's music, as he called it. "Well," he continued more calmly, "I got even with them. Before that cussed thing was brought into the sanctuary, I was always the first there for the meetin'. I seen after many things. Now, I don't darken the door until that screech owl stops." And the old man chuckled. Early the next morning, the elder rapped loudly at the back door with his cane, calling Betty. She came running out to meet him, her fair hair and pretty white dress flying in the breeze. "Why, good morning, Elder," she cried delightedly, and the old man's heart warmed anew to her, for he had long been alone. "Morning, Betty," he answered cheerfully. "I fetched a poke o' posies for your garden. Last night on my way home I was thinkin' you'd be uneasy after bein' so busy gettin' book larnin', and thinks I, flowers is companions to women folks, and you have a goodly space here for 'em," waving his hand over the garden. He had taken off his old soft hat, uncovering his thick white hair, neatly parted far down on the right side. He was very clean and sweet looking in spite of his old coat. Though he had money in the bank, as his poor neighbors said, he rarely bought new clothes. The child, in her freshness and beauty, and the gentle old man formed a charming picture in Mrs. Baird's eyes, as she watched them go together into the old-fashioned garden and stand by the ancient well sweep. He was telling Betty his old grievance. "They even wanted to take this away once. Yes, and all them little panes of glass in the windows there. They carc'lated to take 'em out and put in big blazin' things, all one piece. Why, they was impudent lookin', good enough for them Robinsons down there," and he flipped his thumb disdainfully in the direction of the benighted neighbors. "Dancin' and card playin' folks, but not for a preacher of the everlastin' gospel." "I am glad you didn't let them do it, Elder. It would have been an awful shame to take away that old well sweep. And one of my teachers tells me those little panes of glass are all the fashion now for certain kinds of houses. We have them at our school." "You don't say so!" ejaculated the old man. Well, what's the world comin' to? But I believe I did hear them old mahogany chairs and tables is all the style." "Yes, indeed, Elder. People pay awfully high prices for chairs like my grandmother's." "That I should live to see the day! Why, Betty, they wanted your mother to sell that mahogany sideboard and get a little teeterin' yeller thing. Says I, 'Don't you do it, Mrs. Baird. It's been good for more'n 100 years, and it's good enough now.' Yes, I did." Betty not only enjoyed taking care of the flowers in the garden, but she extended her activities to the house, where she tried to follow out the ideas she had gathered from Miss Greene, whose chief recreation was the study of artistic home decoration. The manse parlor, which the church committee, in a burst of artistic enthusiasm, had furnished the year before, especially demanded all her newly acquired knowledge. The fact that the room had 4 sunny windows had not affected the plans of that final court of appeals in matters of taste and appropriateness. Yellow was fashionable that year, and the room was therefore furnished in as many varieties of that color as the committee could find space for. The walls were covered with paper having large gold figures on a white ground. The floor was protected by a carpet presenting a lemon ground, over which trailed a design of small red roses. The furniture was upholstered in brilliant orange brocade satin. The windows had buff shades. On a sunny day the effect was sulphurous, but the pride of the committee in the result of its work diminished not a jolt or a tittle. Betty asked her mother's permission to cover the glaring satin with pretty figured cretonne, a white ground with a design of tiny green leaves rioting over it, and to put up some soft curtains that greatly subdued the glare. They then went over the room carefully, selecting the pictures that would give the most restful feeling, and putting on the mantelpiece a squat green vase and a pair of silver candlesticks. After their labors were finished, they sat in the parlor congratulating themselves on its appearance, for the first time since the church showered its golden blessings on it. "There isn't an objectionable thing in the room now. Such a piece of luck that those wax flowers Mrs. Davis gave us happened to fall and break into smithereens," exulted Betty. "Yes, for I should have had to leave them in," answered her mother. "We can't afford to hurt people's kind feelings, no matter how much they hurt our artistic ones." "They were too much for me, the garish, ghostly things. But do look there, Mother. Miss Jane and the Elder are coming in with a package, an immense one. What do you suppose it is?" And Betty hurried to the door. Miss Jane brushed flusteredly by her, bidding the Elder to bring the large square bundle into the house. With a bare nod, she unwrapped the package with eager fingers and displayed a remarkable object. From a background of common pasteboard stood out in strong black letters of some curious material the words, "There is no place like home." Above, below, to the right, to the left, were various designs. Gates ajar, wreaths, scrolls, broken hearts, crosses, and crowns, each in a different color, and surrounding all a heavy wreath of dismal black. This wonderful creation, of a material as yet unknown to Betty and her mother, was enclosed in a heavy dead black frame, broad and deep, the whole perhaps 1.25 yards square. "There, sir!" exclaimed Miss Jane triumphantly. "Even if you was to boardin' school a whole year, you never saw the beat of that!" And she beamed on Betty, snapping her long fingers at the mournful object. "What is it, Miss Jane?" asked Mrs. Baird. "There! I knowed it! It's a seed picter! Everything there is seeds. Apple seeds, orange seeds, lemon seeds, sunflower seeds, watermelon seeds, cowcumber seeds, all kinds of seeds is there." And she looked at Betty for some sign of her characteristic enthusiasm. "It's wonderful," sighed the latter, over whom was creeping the blighting fear that it was for her. "Wonderful!" said Miss Jane testily. "There ain't nothin' like it to the Pines, I calc'late." "No, there isn't," agreed Betty in an almost inaudible voice. Miss Jane, mistaking the cause of her emotion, looked immensely pleased. "It's for you, 'Lizbeth," she announced. "Oh, Miss Jane!" cried the girl, tears suffusing her eyes, tears that were the result of horror at the object and heartache at Miss Jane's goodness. Miss Jane was touched. "I knowed you was just sot on purty things, so I tried to think of somethin' real nice, not a dumb present like oh, you know. So I made this here picter. No one but me knows how, so there ain't another in the state. You'd have to go fur to find one." "That's right, you certainly would," agreed the elder. Betty, laughing and crying, threw her arms around Miss Jane and laid her head on her shoulder. "Oh, Miss Jane, how could you spend all that time for me?" Miss Jane had a momentary shamefacedness. Then she brightened as she looked around and saw the furniture had been covered. "You deserves it for coverin' all them fine satin cheers. So savin' for you, 'Lizbeth." "Oh, as to that," began Betty, but her mother interrupted, drawing Miss Jane's attention to the picture. "Why did you take all your precious time making it for that child? It's the kindest thing I ever knew." "Well, I thought she'd miss all them purty things at the Pines, so I jest made that. Once a gal knows, she's apt to grow dissatisfied." Miss Jane looked around for a suitable place for the seed picture, and decided that the gilt mirror should come down from above the white mantelpiece to make room for it. There it remained, to the constant pride and joy of Miss Jane and the elder. Betty did not feel, as Miss Jane intimated, that virtue had received its own proper reward. Sadly, she took the mirror out of the room and put it over the sitting-room mantel, determined to make that room the object of her artistic efforts in the future. End of chapter 14. Recording by Holly Jensen.